The Tainted Glove presents Yumper and Svo at the Show podcast with Tom Yumper Garcia.
Oh, what a big man you are. Hey, let me buy you a pack of gum. I'll show you how to chew it. Ooh.
And Justin Svo Svoboda.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Two guys from Chicago talking movies.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 5 of Yumper and Svo at the Show. I'm one of your hosts, Tom Garcia. They call me Yumper, and I'm with my co-host, Justin Svo Svoboda. What's up, Svo?
What's up, everybody? How's everybody doing?
Today is a lazy day, man. Too bad I watched the Illini lose the basketball game in the second round. I was heartbroken. The Cubs didn't sign anybody, so it's good to talk movies.
Same, except for Florida State didn't make the tournament. And the White Sox haven't signed anybody either, unless you are a middle reliever.
Yeah, we're hurting here, man. We're hurting here. But Swole, I have a question. People have been asking us. They've been saying that we are kind of similar. Like we're brothers from a different mother. We have different tastes in movies. And they wanted me to ask you.
When exactly did you become blood brother?
Sorry, I had to get a little pop from certain people have been asking me to include that in our clips for a while.
I love it. I love it. I love Phil Hartman. He's actually in one of the movies that we're going to be talking about today.
Yes, he is.
I love him.
But before we get into what we're going to talk about today, we're going to actually go to our usual shindig. We're going to talk about you, the listener, and we're going to go to our Twitter responses. So this week we posted up a question saying, what was your favorite movie of the 90s? So you want to take it away?
Yeah, absolutely. We had some great responses this week. A couple normal listeners, long-time listeners. I say long time. This is our 5th episode, Beef. If you're listening, we made it to 5. So we've survived the 5th episode. But the first person was my cousin Mark, actually, who recently just joined Twitter and followed Yumper and Svo at the Show. And he went with Tommy Boy. He said Tommy Boy is a classic and he always enjoyed the humor. Brian, at Magnificent Stand, supporter of the pod, went with Falling Down, which I have a feeling we might be having a conversation about later as well.
Hint, hint.
Hint, hint. And then our boy, K-Fids, went Babe, Pig in the City. And then he quickly changed his mind to The Matrix or Fight Club. But also, Babe, Pig in the City was a good movie in the 90s.
Yes, I agree. Good sequel.
And oh yeah, Pig in the City, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a good sequel to the original one. Pete Chapman said Terminator 2 or Jurassic Park. They combined the perfect 90s live action, animatronics, and special effects. Nothing before was shot as big and had these capabilities. Everything after this big is shot on soundstage and green screen. They are 90s films to me. I absolutely love that answer. I do feel like that those movies feel different when they were made. And then Shankster John said it was a tough call. Movies in that decade hit me in different ways at different times. Like early was True Romance, just so cool. Pulp Fiction, Usual Suspects at another time. LA Confidential, Heat, Office Space, Good Will Hunting. It's hard to choose a top one. And I think all those movies that he just named were movies that kind of stand the test of time in the 90s, and I absolutely love all of them.
I completely agree. The 90s, as we're going to learn, was probably one of the best times in movie history. Like, just looking at the movies that were released throughout the 90s is just ridiculous. I would put it up against any decade that there is in the industry. But moving on. Also, before we move on, shout out to Shankster, who's always a big supporter of the show. And you can always respond to our comments at Yumper and Svo on Twitter. Or you can check us out at the new taintedglove.com, where we have all our pods posted up and some blogs by us, along with the Tainted Glove podcast with Pete and Kevin, or Mr. Hand and Fids. So you guys can check us out there at the taintedglove.com. And we're going to move on to our what we've been watching. So I can start us off on this one. So one movie I watch, I seem to get into when I'm kind of bored or I'm kind of just trying to relax, is a movie called Confidence that was released in 2003. It's a movie directed by James Foley. And it has Edward Norton, Dustin Hoffman, Paul Giamatti, Andy Garcia, Rachel Weisz. It has like an all-star cast in my mind. Morris Chestnut. The movie is basically a con game that is based on this group of cons that get trouble for pulling a scheme on somebody they know was connected to somebody else. It's not the greatest movie, but it's a lot of entertaining, a lot of comedy aspect to it. Andy Garcia is hilarious in the movie. Also, awesome soundtrack by Christoph Beck. What about you, Swo?
So I think it was after a long day this last week for my wife. She came home and we kind of just wanted to hang out together downstairs in the basement. And I rented Dog with Channing Tatum and German Shepherd. Those were the stars of the movie. And I thought it was going to be a pretty cliche, you know, oh, dog doesn't get along with the owner doesn't like the dog. But it actually was a lot more. It was a lot. There were some deeper messages on there, and it was a kind of a nice look into the minds of someone that's struggling with PTSD. Channing Tatum was a soldier in Afghanistan, and the dog that is in the movie was his partner's partner in Afghanistan. So the dog was actually dealing with some PTSD, and so was Channing Tatum. It's a very good movie. I really, really enjoyed it. It does tug at the heartstrings. And I am going to give a small spoiler alert because I would never have someone do this, but the dog does not die at the end. The dog lives. So watch this movie. I really enjoyed it. And then on St. Patrick's Day, I was home alone because my wife was out working, and I decided to watch Leprechaun Origins from I think it was 2016 or 2017, and it's a little bit more serious take on the Leprechaun lore that we know. Like the original Leprechaun was really campy and really corny. Jennifer Aniston was in it. And this one is still a crazy premise, but it's a little bit more serious and a little bit more darker. Like the Batman, but with Leprechaun.
Yeah, actually, I really enjoyed kind of like the storyline they had of that movie because I think Warwick Davis is awesome in the original one, but the story they made up for the movie, like the way they built everything around the Leprechaun, was cool. But the way they made him look was just horrible. He just looked
Absolutely
bad.
agree. But yeah, that's what I've been watching these last couple weeks.
Yeah, so I have one more movie I actually checked out, and it's actually a movie from 2013 called 47 Ronin. As you know, I love a lot of timepieces and like anything with martial arts, samurai. That's something that's like right up my alley. It's a movie directed by Carl Reich, and it's actually a American spinoff of the 47 Roman samurai that actually went and avenged the death of their master and fought corruption during their time. It stars actually Keanu Reeves, who plays a half Japanese, half they have like a mystic ethnicity there that are like people who are magicians and wizards and whatnot. It's kind of like a real fantasy take on it, but it's actually very entertaining. And I think in reality, if you just look at the feature of the character or the features of a character that Keanu plays, there's nobody else that could play it but Keanu. It's very entertaining. It also has Hiroki Sanada from you might know him from Last Samurai or even the new Mortal Kombat movie. He plays Scorpion, the Japanese version of Scorpion. And Kerry Tagawa, which is actually the Emperor, not Emperor, Shang Tsung from the original Mortal Kombat. So it has some actually good actors in there, and the movie was actually pretty entertaining.
I love almost anything Keanu Reeves is in. I'm very excited for John Wick 4. Uh, Although I will, like, full disclosure here, I have not watched The Matrix Resurrections yet.
I have watched it. It was you know what me and K Fids get into this all the time. This debate. The original Matrix I thought was great, and I know it's an allegory for certain things, but I thought the second and the third one the second was okay, and the third one was kind of low. The new one is a different take on certain things, but also leaves the story kind of like it has a lot of plot holes in my mind, or even you'll see like when you watch it, it has a lot of plot holes. So that's one thing of the movie I didn't like. So it's okay. I don't think it's great, but
I don't
it's okay.
disagree with you about the sequels at all. In fact, I bring him up a lot because he's one of my primary like movie like role models. My cousin Mark used to call it or refer to it as the Matrix Revulsion, instead of revolutions, because it was awful. There's no, like, you can't sugarcoat it. It was terrible. Um, the second one was okay, but the third one was just absolutely brutal. And the funny thing is that I actually love the Wachowskis. I love Speed Racer. It's one of my favorite movies. I love some of the things that they do. I hope that in 15, 20 years that people talk about Speed Racer being like a hidden gem and an underrated classic, because it absolutely is. But I think the Matrix movies have jumped the gun for me. But I am gonna watch the fourth one just for the sake of watching it. But I digress.
Yeah, same with me. I went to go see Matrix Revolutions at the theater when I was in college. I was actually kind of excited to go see it, and when I walked out, I'm like, it's kind of like a rehashing of the first movie. That's just the way I felt.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Um, but I did see a new movie yesterday. I forgot to mention this. I saw Studio 666 with my wife.
Did you rent it like I told you to?
Yes, I rented it.
Who told you to do that?
You did,
I
Mrs.
did. Okay.
Svoboda.
I just want to make sure that I'm getting like my credit where it's due.
Yeah, so I
So
watched
when
it.
your wife listens to this, who we know is the big Foo Fighters fan, that it wasn't some grand gesture from her husband, that it was your podcast partner that put this out in the world for her to have.
In my defense, I did not know it was available for rent. I thought it was only in theater.
Well, as someone that uses Apple products every single day, right? The biggest part of our ecosystem is the iTunes store and the App Store. So I am consistently checking every day to see what's new and what's released, especially in the COVID era, where a lot of these movies were released directly like to video on demand. If I can watch something at home on my TV in my basement, I'd like to take advantage of it. So I saw that and I text you immediately because I know how big of a Foo Fighters fan your wife is.
Yeah, she really is. Them and the Chili Peppers are like her two favorites. But no spoilers, but the movie is, to me, was a Foo Fighters music video like play. Dave Grohl is hilarious in there. Pat Smear is his guitarist, old time guitarist. Also was in Nirvana, a traveling guitarist for Nirvana. He is
He was
hilarious.
also in the Germs.
Yep,
Come on, man.
the Germs as well. But I mean, in reality, not well. I guess our audience would know that. But yeah, them two in the movie are hilarious. It's just very campy and corny, but it's okay. Jen
I,
liked it a lot. I mean, I enjoyed the movie. It's long too. It's like I think 2 hours. I was surprised. But and Jeff Garland's in it. And he's plays a hilarious part as well.
it's an hour and 46 minutes and 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's pretty long.
According to the iTunes store. So that's not long for a comedy like that. I didn't realize Jeff Garland was in it.
Yeah.
I love Jeff Garland. Jeff Garland and Curb Your Enthusiasm, for my money, is like fantastic. Also, my wife and I, it's a guilty pleasure. We love the Goldbergs, and it is not the same without Jeff Garland in there. In fact, some of the worst CGI I've ever seen was the last 3 weeks of the Goldbergs, because they edit him out and they just do a voiceover, and it's awful. But I will watch it strictly
So
for.
it's not like Livia Soprano CGI.
It's worse than Olivia Soprano CGI.
Oh my god.
But I will check it out just because Jeff Garland's in it. So I might rent it sometime this week. Actually, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to rent it for our flight to Vegas and put it on the iPad.
Yeah, it's really campy. I mean, but there is a lot of good things in the movie. Like it's a horror movie, so there's a lot of like good callbacks, like The Exorcist. There's a lot of shots where he like you could see like there's scene cinematography. Like you'll recognize him right away when you see him.
I will see that for sure.
So
I'm a fan of Dave Grohl. So
yeah, and Dave Grohl seems like a hilarious guy. I know my wife read his autobiography and she said he's hilarious, and he actually lived in a haunted house, so that's kind of cool too. But yeah, check out the Studio 666. Let me know what you guys think. But with that, let's get into our meat and potatoes of the show. So as you know,
delicious, Yumper. That sounds delicious.
yes, it does. So as you know, we wanted to try something new, and we went with a random year generator. We put in the last 30 years into the generator, and we got 1 year back, and that was 1993. So me and Swole decided, why don't we do a draft from the movies of 1993? So let's do a draft NBA style. We pick our top 10 draft picks. So just a little tidbits about 1993. 1993 was a big year for movies in that era of the decade. Although it was the sixth most grossing year at $4.8 billion, that's still a lot of money at that time in the 90s. There's a lot of movies in here that you're going to hear. There are classics, Oscar worthy, etc. But always remember, guys, these are our opinions, and we would love to know yours. So opinions differ from everybody. And with that, Swell, you ready to get into this?
Yeah, let's do it, man. I love it. Are the animations gonna pop up, or do we like to reveal them, or do they just come up on the screen? Just curious.
Just come up on the screen, sir.
Oh, okay. I put effects in there for nothing then, Yumper.
I'm sorry, man. They just come up on the screen.
You know what it is. You know what it is, right?
It's PowerPoint. Yes, I know it's PowerPoint.
Stupid Google Chrome. And you make me use this browser.
It's not me, it's StreamYard. We record on StreamYard. Check us out on YouTube.
I know. I'm just busting chops.
But let's get to my first pick.
You can be anything you want to be. Remember, the saddest thing in life is wasted talent. You could have all the talent in the world, but if you don't do the right thing, then nothing happens. But when you do right, guess what? Good things happen. You hear me?
A Bronx Tale, directed by Robert De Niro in his directorial debut, starring Chaz Palminteri, Robert De Niro, Leo Brancato, Catherine Narducci, Terrell Hicks, and Joe Pesci plays a part in it. This movie was based off Chaz Palminteri's one-man show, also named The Bronx Tale. It was sought after by so many people, and Palminteri has gone on record saying that this movie basically saved his life in terms of financially. He was living out of his car, not making much money doing his stand-up show, and people were coming to him asking him to buy the script for the show, but he wouldn't sell it unless he was actually starring as Sonny. And Robert De Niro actually saw the show and said it was probably the best one-man show he's ever seen, and offered him the money to do so as long as he got to play Lorenzo, and Palminteri automatically accepted. Probably one of the best movies I remember growing up. Great soundtrack, great characters in there. Not your typical mob movie. A lot of life lessons are actually put in through this movie, like waste of talent is a big one. Know your friends. Always work hard. The working man's always a persona and line that's always used throughout this movie. Just an all-time classic for me. That's why I had to have it as my number one.
Yeah, absolutely. The soundtrack is fantastic. The scene in the bar where they use it's a cover of a Beatles song. Now You Can't Leave, and I'm surprised that's the audio that you didn't use. There's two audio clips that I'm surprised you didn't use. One is when Sonny tells him to let her in the car, and if she unlocks the door, then she's the keeper. So I'm surprised you didn't use that one, and I'm surprised you didn't use the other one. Or The Working Man Is a Sucker would have been a good soundbite, but you killed it with that. I love it. I love that you did that.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to go with the I wanted to use the Now You Can't Leave, but for some reason we get flagged a lot on YouTube if we use certain music. So
no, it's cool. I think that was perfect. I love this movie. The other thing that I didn't hear you mention is this movie was a very, very, like, not early because it was 93, but they talked about racial relations a lot in this movie. And they touched upon some things that were still sensitive to people. And they did a really good job of it. And, Brancato went on to play Matthew Bevilacqua in The Sopranos, and he had some struggles with the law in his personal life. But he absolutely, like, was fantastic in this movie as Colosio. And I love this movie. You stole it from me only because you got the number one pick. It also would have been my number one.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man, but I couldn't. The movie is just so great. So many memorable characters, from Jimmy Whispers to Eddie Mush. I mean, Eddie Mush is still talked about today when people say you mushed it as a degenerate gambler.
It's fantastic. I love this movie. I could watch this. I introduced it to my wife a few months back for the first time, and even someone that doesn't like mafia movies or mobster movies, she loved this movie.
And also, like, Leo Brancato, his appearance, he looks just like a young Robert De Niro.
Absolutely.
With the mole and everything. Like, it looks like you're looking at a young Robert De Niro. And I found it funny. I was reading up on him. He actually auditioned by doing the monologue from Raging Bull. that he uses in the movie Renaissance Man.
What's funny is that I was just gonna say it. Like, it turns out he's in a bunch of my favorite things. He's in A Bronx Tale. He's in Renaissance Man, which you and I had a whole conversation about a couple weeks back. It's a severely underrated movie. And then he plays a pretty integral part in I want to say season 2 of The Sopranos.
Yes.
With with sorry, Chris Moltisanti. So he's turned out to be in a bunch of projects that like are very, very important to me in terms of stuff that I love. So fantastic pick, Yumper, with The Bronx Tale.
And let's get to Swo's pick.
It is just a delay. That's all it is. All major theme parks have delays. When they opened Disneyland in 1956, nothing worked.
Yeah, but John, if the Pirates of the Caribbean breaks down, the pirates don't eat the tourists.
Directed by the great one, Steven Spielberg, based off the book by Michael Crichton, starring Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, Richard Attenborough, Wayne Knight, and Samuel Jackson. We can only be talking about the great Jurassic Park. This movie made over $1 billion on a $63 million budget. Oh, and it won 3 Academy Awards. Tell us about your picks, Will.
So before I get into like the bones of this movie, the summer of 1993, I had to go and stay with my mom. My mom lived in this small, tiny little town in Indiana. It's called Oxford, Indiana, and the population couldn't have been more than a couple hundred people. And my mom tried to fill the weekends like that I was there with stuff to do. And she took us, she was like, "Hey, I want to take you to the drive-in. Like, I want to take you to the movies. What do you want to see?" And I was like, Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park. Like, I can't wait to see Jurassic Park. But my stepdad wanted to see Last Action Hero with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I had to go see Last Action Hero. And I didn't get to see Jurassic Park till 2 weeks later when my dad took me to see it at Stratford Square Mall in Bloomingdale. And when I saw it, I was absolutely blown away. It was the greatest thing I'd ever seen. I loved it. I immediately wanted to see it again. The first time that you see the dinosaurs it's like, to quote another favorite movie of mine, Superbad, it's like hearing the Beatles for the first time. Like, it's filled with action and dinosaurs and fantastic acting performances, and Samuel L. Jackson with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, like at the computer, and Newman as Nedry, setting up the systems to fail. It's the perfect summer blockbuster that all summer blockbusters should try to build around. I love it, and I still love it to this day. And even though I think Chris Pratt is a complete tool, I am very excited for the last part of the Jurassic World trilogy. Because who doesn't love freaking dinosaurs? Sorry, I've said my piece. Yumper, why do you like this movie?
No, I completely agree with you, especially the part about dinosaurs. One of my good friends, Johnny, is a huge fan of dinosaurs right now, even as an adult. Anything with dinosaurs, he goes to see. That's why he saw all the sequels and the movies, anticipating the new movie coming out, just like you. I remember this movie, frankly, for just going for the screen experience. My dad took me to Fort City Mall, and I was like 8, I think I was 8 years old, because this was a summer blockbuster. We went to Fort City Mall, and I just remember sitting there and just hearing the stomping of the Tyrannosaurus Rex when it was coming, seeing the water move, the vibration, and hearing that in the theater. I always remember that in my head, just hearing that. And then when it came on VHS, yes, we're that old. We bought it on VHS. I watched it like a lot. Love the character actors in it. Jeff Goldblum is awesome. Love the Richard Attenborough with Burrow with his complete dialogue as the famous, person that who ran a flea circus for money, and now he's a millionaire that wants to develop all these dinosaurs. Samuel Jackson has such a small part, but it's such a big part of the whole culture of Jurassic Park with the hold on to your butts. Sam Neill and Laura Dern were awesome. Jeff Goldblum, can't say enough about him. So many memes are made from this movie today, so it still holds like a lot of weight. The CGI hasn't aged well, but just the nostalgia of the movie impacts a lot of people. I mean, this movie was a movie that Fitz told us when we had our Oscar episode that, it really got him falling in love with movies even more with the John Williams soundtrack.
Yeah, it's well, and in its defense, like the special effects might have aged well, but it was also the first time that a lot of these special effects were ever used. Right?
Yes,
So,
yes.
like things have changed tremendously. So it's no fault of the movie. They took some chances, they took some risks, they paid off. Um, Before we go on to round two, I gotta ask this because I think it was a conversation that everybody had with their friends when this movie was in the theater and popular. But what was your favorite dinosaur in the movie?
The Tyrannosaurus Rex.
See, for me, and I think it comes back in Jurassic World Fall or Dominion, the Dilophosaurus, the spitter. When he spits the black tar at Nedry, man, I wanted to see more of that dinosaur. That
It
was
was
my
really cool. And that was actually animatronics that they did. That
Stan
movie,
Winston company did the animatronics for that, I believe.
same thing for the Tyrannosaurus Rex. I think they actually didn't they have the Tyrannosaurus Rex on display at the Field Museum for a while in Chicago?
They might have, yeah.
I could vaguely remember that. I don't, somebody call me, correct me if I'm wrong on that. But yeah, just the animatronics were awesome, and that's why it won for visual effects, like an Oscar for it. And the sound mixing, like I said, with the vibrations of the Tyrannosaurus Rex walking, the sounds that he made were that Spielberg put in. I'm saying to make the dinosaurs sound like because we actually don't know what they really sounded like, but they the way they made it in the movie were awesome. It's just it's so good. I could still watch that today and still be happy with it. Like
Absolutely.
I'm really excited to show my son Jurassic Park when he's a little older, so he understands.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The scene where the T-Rex is chasing them and they show him in the rearview mirror, to me is one of the finest pieces of filmmaking that's ever existed. And I don't mean that like, oh yeah, Citizen Kane, The Godfather. Like it's just a good lesson in movie making, in my opinion.
Yeah, especially like the little details where it has the things may appear larger than they are in the mirror, which is ridiculously hilarious. But yeah, it's just so many good things about the movie. So it's a very formidable number one. If you were going to take Bronx Tale, I probably was going to take Jurassic Park as my number one too. So, but let's get on to our second pick.
All you have to do is tell me what it's worth to you. What's a person worth?
No. What's one worth to you?
Schindler's List, directed by Steven Spielberg, starring Liam Neeson, Ben Kingsley, Ralph Fiennes, Caroline Godell. Movie won 7 Oscars: Best Picture, Best Director. Made over $322 million at the box office on a $22 million budget. Movie is drastically, like very, very drastically depressing, but very, very beautifully told by Steven Spielberg. I think this is probably one of his best movies, if not the best. It has some competition there, but the way it's shot in black and white, besides the girl in red, which is another great point in the movie. If you haven't seen it, I'm sorry, I'm spoiling this, but this is also a 25-year-old movie. But it just the way it's beautifully shot. Liam Neeson is great as Oscar Schindler. Ben Kingsley plays an awesome role in it. Such a great, awesome movie. It's so depressing, but yet so beautifully told, and it shows the horrors that the Jewish people faced during the Holocaust, and what Oscar Schindler did to try to protect those he could. What do you think, Swell?
Yeah, I don't want to say too many things because I don't want to trivialize or like lessen the impact that this movie had. This is Steven Spielberg's best work and probably one of like his most personal movies. The performances were great. Um, Everything that you said about the way it was shot, the girl in red, um, is perfect. And um, yeah, like there's I don't want to lessen the impact that this movie has by saying anything about it other than you should watch it because I still think to this day it's an important story that like we should never forget.
Totally agree. It's still a lot of meaning there, and it's still something that holds up to this day.
I will
Um,
say that it's a fantastic first date movie. If you're gonna go see it.
I was actually just gonna say that. Bring your first date to watch it, aka K-Fids.
Love you, Kev.
But let's get to your pick.
Say, man, you got a joint? No, not on me, man. It'd be a lot cooler if you did.
Dazed and Confused, directed by Richard Linklater, starring Jason London, Ben Affleck, Mila Djokovic, Cole Hauser, Parker Posey, Adam Goldberg, Matthew McConaughey, Nicky Katt, Lauren Wilson, Renee Zellweger, and Rory Cochrane. Movie was basically a underperformer at the box office on a $6.9 million budget. It made $8 million, but it made a lot of money on VHS and just developed a cult following. We could have added this one to our cult following as well, but Quentin Tarantino actually included this movie in the list of the top 10 greatest films of all time. Tell us why it's your number 2, Swell.
I've told this story before to you, to everybody, but whenever I see this movie, it makes me wish that I was 16 years old in 1976. I want to have a party at the Moon Tower. I want to drink beer out of the backseat of an El Camino, out of the trunk of an El Camino. The soundtrack is fantastic. Was it Jason London or Jeremy London? Jason London. Jeremy was in Mallrats, right? I don't know. Whatever. Gold jacket, green jacket, who gives a shit? Ben Affleck is such a tool in this movie. Cole Hauser is awesome. Nicky Katt is like, I came here to drink beer and kick some ass, and I'm all out of beer. When they're at the Moon Tower, the paddles for freshman initiation. It's a fantastic movie that makes me wish that I got to be alive in this time. I wasn't born for 5 more years, but I love this movie. I love the music. I had a great conversation about this movie last night with my dad as we went to the United Center to see the Eagles. And it's just a good movie, man. It's so quotable. How about you, Yump?
Same, man. It's very quotable, very memorable characters. I mean, the opening clip I used was Matthew McConaughey, who fits that persona as a speedhead. The movie is hilarious. Ben Affleck is such an asshole in the movie and a person that hasn't outgrown his childish things when he's a second-year senior or a repeating senior, basically, that goes and does the paddles. And the crazy thing is, this movie, I think, takes over place in one night, right? It goes from the beginning always like the beginning of the day to the end, like the next day.
Yeah, it all takes place in one night, the last day of school in 1976, which I think was the centennial, like the 100-year anniversary, like of the United States, and they talk about it in the movie. They're like, remember, when you're out there celebrating on the 4th of July, just remember you're celebrating the fact that we didn't want to pay taxes. And then it goes into the party at night, the last night of school. And it's about the football team and relationships with friends and, trying to fool around with the hot girl. It's just a very, very good movie, very relatable, because those themes transferred over to, like our 80s movies and then our 90s movies and then our 2000s movies. Every generation has that movie, right? Where you're touching on these subjects, and it's good. Richard Linklater is fantastic. He's done a bunch of other great things. I love him.
Yeah, it's just a fantastic job. It pulls like you were saying, it pulls a lot of influences from the 80s movies that we discussed in our episode too. But it's something that took its own spin on it, and that's what I liked about it a lot. Like a lot of memorable characters in this movie, and I really recommend you guys watch it. It's one of my wife's favorite movies. It's one of the first movies that we actually watched together. She showed me this. I mean, I've seen it before, but like it's like one of her favorites. So definitely check out Dazed and Confused. Let's move on to our third picks.
You must be Doc Holliday.
That's the rumor.
You retired too?
Not me. I'm in my prime.
Tubestone, directed by George P. Costamatos, depicts the gunfight at the OK Corral and the Earp Vendetta ride. The movie stars Kurt Russell, Val Kilmer, Michael Biehn, Powers Booth, Bill Paxton, and Stephen Lang. Movie made about $72 million on a $25 million budget. Why I picked Tombstone number 3, I love Westerns, and I cannot overlook the performance by Val Kilmer as Doc Holliday. The movie is a decent movie. It's a good portrayal and like more of a Hollywood style of the OK Corral. but Val Kilmer steals the show in the movie as and I was looking at the Oscar nominees, and Val Kilmer should have at least took over at least one of those spots to be nominated for supporting actor. This is probably, in my opinion, one of his best roles, if not his best role, by his improvisation, the way he acted in terms of Doc Holliday. There's actually historical evidence that he used a lot of words that Holliday said that were written down and heard at the time. It's just an all around great movie. And you have Sam Elliott and Kurt Russell, who's also one of my favorite actors from Big Trouble in Little China. So it's a great movie. I loved it. That's why I chose it as my number 3.
Yeah, I think you said Sam Elliott and Bill Paxton, and like just the supporting cast is fantastic. It's a great movie. I don't like westerns. Like I never did like westerns. Like I always thought they were kind of boring, and there's been exceptions to the rule. But I love this movie, and it has probably one of the what's the most quotable line from this movie? Yup.
I'm your Huckleberry.
I'm your Huckleberry. Absolutely. It's just a good movie, man. It's kind of loud and obnoxious, gunfights, but super quotable and a good movie. Also, Michael Rooker is in it too.
Yes, he is. Michael. He plays a
Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer.
Yeah, but in the movie, he plays a member of Johnny Ringo's gang that actually turns good and helps out Wyatt Earp during the Vendetta run. So the movie is really good. Like memorable characters in terms of that. It's just it's not an Oscar worthy movie in terms of story, but as far as character performances, yeah, Val Kilmer definitely should have got one. And I see a lot of people still arguing that today. Like he should have got at least a consideration, like serious consideration for the way he played Doc Holliday.
I love Val Kilmer. Like I will always defend him as Batman. I love him in Top Gun. I think he's one of the most underrated actors to do it. So much love for Val Kilmer.
Totally agree. Also, another Val Kilmer movie I love a lot, Thunderheart. Another great one.
Oh, Thunderheart's good. Was that the serial killers on the Native American?
It wasn't serial killers, but it had to do with they murder on a Native American
on
reservation.
the reservation, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a good movie. Check that one out if you guys get a chance. But let's get to your number 3 pick.
Yeah, No, you done fucked up, don't you? No, it don't. No, you done fucked up.
Directed by the Hughes brothers, Menace to Society stars Tyron Turner, Jada Pinkett, Lorenz Tate, Bill Duke, and Charles S. Dutton. The movie was filmed on a $3.5 million budget and it made $30 million. It deals with a lot of many social issues that exist today that we're dealing with in 2022. So why did you choose it as your third pick, Well?
First of all, this movie is fantastic. It was it took everything that John Singleton did with Boys in the Hood a couple years prior and built on it. It kind of shone a light on what it was like to live in like urban Los Angeles, and the things that were going on there. Lorenz Tate as O-Dog. It has some very, very memorable lines that were quoted and spoofed and memed a million times. The soundtrack is all 90s gangster rap. It's pretty fantastic. Originally, O-Dog was supposed to be played by Tupac, but he got into a fist fight with the Hughes brothers while filming the movie, and they replaced him. And Lorenz Tate came in. And I can't imagine the movie without Lorenz Tate. Like, I love Tupac. Tupac's my favorite rapper of all time. So I can't imagine this movie with him because that's how good Lorenz Tate was in this movie. I think it's a great movie that hits on things that are relevant and things that we need to talk about. Just a great all around movie.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said. One thing that stood out to me about this movie is that with the character of Kane, Tyrone Taylor's character, is actually somebody that you kind of like don't like. Just so what he does in terms of the way he robs people. He's not he's kind of like an anti-hero in this movie. Like he does a lot of bad things, but you see how he thinks, like why he has to do these bad things and why, the situations around him so socially, and then his decision, what the outcome of his decisions and how they affect his story. and basically his life throughout the movie.
I completely agree with you. He's not a very likable character through a large portion of this movie. There are like glimpses of hope and things that you see in him where you're like, this is not a bad person, just a person that's very misguided right now and doesn't know the difference between right and wrong. But he does some things in here that like are unforgivable, but there's still that little piece of his conscience in his head that he's like, I shouldn't do this. I should leave. I should go do this. And the movie ends and he has to pay the price for those things. There's consequences to your actions. The Hughes brothers, I think, are an example of directors that could have been two of the biggest directors on the planet. And for some reason, they decided to go different routes. They did Dead Presidents after this, which is a fantastic movie. And then they made this documentary called American Pimp. And it was about like the pimp game. And it had appearances from like famous pimps in the world, right? And they never quite got to where they needed to be or where John Singleton was. And I know it's not right to compare the Hughes brothers to John Singleton, but Menace to Society and Boys in the Hood are always mentioned in the same genre, and they just never quite got there. I know he went on and he did one of the Hughes brothers went on and did Book of Eli, I think, with Denzel Washington. But they never quite got there, and this was a perfect example of their talent.
Yeah, actually, they both did Book of Eli. They did Book of Eli after From Hell, which is their follow up to American Pimp. And From Hell was okay. It was the Jack the Ripper with Johnny Depp. But yeah, they haven't done anything really drastically impactful. The last thing that I'm looking at were Albert Hughes. The last thing he did was The Good Lord Bird, and that was in 2020. And Alan Hughes did The Defiant Ones, a documentary miniseries in 2017. So they haven't really put anything, out there that's impactful. Hopefully, maybe they'll do something in the future. I mean, they're still relatively young. They're both only 49 years old.
They had such a powerful voice with Menace to Society and Dead Presidents. I would love to see more from them. It kind of goes back to and it's probably not that serious, but it goes back to the quote from A Bronx Tale, like about wasted talent.
Yeah, I could totally see that. But I mean, like I said, they're still 49, so hopefully they can get something else in the mix because they're still both very talented individuals.
Yeah, I would love to see what other stories they had to tell.
But with that, let's go to our fourth picks.
Watch out for that first step. It's a doozy.
Groundhog Day, directed by Harold Ramis, starring Bill Murray, Addie McDowell, Chris Elliott, and Steven Tobolowsky as Ned. The movie made $105 million on a $30 million budget. This is one of the first movies I saw in high school for film class. We actually did a study on this, and they incorporated it to religion, actually. Is he doing bad things? Is his bad decisions causing his outlook in life, like where he has to repeat his mistakes? I thought it was a nice little turn on it. I went to a Catholic high school, so that's where I
you
grew
go
up.
to high school, Yump?
I went to St. Rita, brother. Go Mustangs.
My dad's gonna listen to this pod this week and be very happy you said that.
Yeah, but it's just one of my favorite movies with Bill Murray. Harold Ramis directed it. He's a comic genius along with Bill Murray. I love the story of the movie as terms you keep repeating the day. There are so many fan theories that have gone out there that are hilarious, like Ned being the devil, and the reason that Bill repeats his days is because he doesn't buy the insurance for him, which means he's making amends for his sins. Just stuff like that. The movie is hilarious, though, and Bill Murray improvises a lot of his dialogue. What do you think, Spo?
I love Groundhog Day. I don't know, like you grew up not far from where my family's from, but do you remember Harlem Corners on like 87th and Harlem?
Yes, I do.
I saw this movie at Harlem Corners with my aunt, who was a very important person in my life. She took me to see it, and she loved this movie. It's hilarious. It's funny. Like his relationship with like having to report about Punxsutawney Phil every year. He hates it. He wants out. He wants to get it done in one take and leave. Then he's stuck. in this tiny little town in Pennsylvania, which actually is in Woodstock, Illinois, um, filmed locally. And Ned, when he steps off the ledge or steps off the curb into the street, into the slush, this movie is hilarious. I love this movie. I love Bill Murray. This made me like really appreciate Bill Murray besides, Bill Murray and Ghostbusters. I love Bill Murray and Ghostbusters, but this movie made me appreciate all the things that he was capable of. And then I reappreciated him again years later when he did Sofia Coppola's Lost in Translation. Just one of the best all-around actors, and I don't know if he gets his due. Like, people like him and people appreciate him, and he has this following, but I don't know if it's because they think he's a good actor, and he really is.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because doing a deep dive, I do research on these guys. I don't just talk about them out of our butts. We try to be prepared for this. Doing some research, this movie is actually the last collaboration between Harold and Bill. Bill actually didn't like the movie. He thought the focus was more on comedy and the theme of love, finding a relationship. He wanted it to be more about people repeating their lives to change. Him and Harold Ramis clashed a lot about that, and they actually didn't talk and only reunited when Harold Ramis was actually really sick a few months before he passed away, which is really sad. And another thing too, Danny Rubin, the person who actually wrote the script for this and story, was really scared about bringing this to Hollywood because he hates the Hollywood cookie cutter. And when Harold Ramis read the script, they just made some subtle changes to it to where it pleased him enough to get a writing credit. And this is the only movie that he's credited as a writer. So that's pretty incredible. He just went back to writing books and stories because he hates the Hollywood lifestyle and the Hollywood cookie cutters the way they make movies. So those two little things were really crazy.
Yeah, it's I don't know, like Chris Elliott was great in this movie, and Andy McDowell was great in this movie, and it's still very quotable, obviously. And I'll never look at "I Got You, Babe" by Sonny and Cher the same way ever again.
Definitely. It's a classic. But let's get on to your pick.
Now just shut your goddamn pie hole.
This Boy's Life, directed by Michael Keaton Jones, based on the book The Boy's Life by Tobias Wolff, starring Robert De Niro, Ellen Barkin, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Jonah Blackman. The movie was made a $4 million box office on a limited release. Let me know why you chose this one for number 4 as well.
Once again, I tell the story about how my dad never bought or paid for HBO growing up, but for some reason we always got free Encore, and the free Encore allowed me to discover a lot of movies that I don't know if I would have till later on in life. The Outsiders was one of them because it was always on Encore, and This Boy's Life was always on there. And I saw this movie once, and I've always loved Robert De Niro. Like, Robert De Niro is fantastic. And I saw this movie, I'm like, I hate Robert De Niro's character in this movie. He is a terrible person. He is the worst stepfather. It made me realize like how lucky I was growing up with 2 step parents that weren't like this at all. Like, he is an awful person. He makes so many derogatory like comments to Leonardo DiCaprio's character about his sexuality, about the choices that he makes. Awful person, but he plays it really well. So you feel for Leonardo DiCaprio, who is super young. I think he might have just gotten out of like growing pains to do this movie, like only a couple years prior. Ellen Barkin is the mom that just picks up and moves at will whenever she wants to change her situation. It's a fantastic movie, and I don't think people talk about it enough in terms of Robert De Niro's like finest works because his portfolio is so massive. This is a great freaking movie.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. It's a definite Robert De Niro hidden gem. He plays a complete asshole in this movie.
Like, there's no way to sugarcoat it.
Yeah, it's the way and it's not like his Max Cady because you knew who Max Cady was. It's the way he sets you up in this movie. Like, you think he's going to be a he sets up as a person who seems like he's okay and then goes downhill from there. And that's relatable to real life, how people are fooled into marriage by people they think they know, and then when they marry them, it completely goes down the drain.
That's
Uh,
how I got fooled. Like it happened.
yeah, it's crazy. And Leo, like you said, I think this was one of the first movies he came out of from Growing Pains. Uh, just showing his chops as an actor and showing him his development as what he is today. This is another great movie just to check out. So I definitely would recommend checking out This Boy's Life. But let's get into our fifth round and our fifth picks.
Who hired you to do that? Okay. Okay. Just let me think. His name was Julio Iglesias.
The Firm, directed by Sidney Pollack, based on the book by John Grisham, starring Tom Cruise, Jan Triplehorn, Gene Hackman, Ed Harris, Holly Hunter, William Brenly. He sure wasn't that nice diabetes guy in this movie, and Gary Busey, with a couple special appearances by Paul Sorvino, which I thought was pretty cool at the end. This movie made a $270 million on a $42 million budget. One of my favorite Tom Cruise performances. Tom Cruise is excellent playing lawyers. He did it great in A Few Good Men. I think this movie is actually right after A Few Good Men, if I'm correct. He did, and from a guy who didn't even finish high school. Excellent actor, and he doesn't get enough attention as he should. I know me and Soul mentioned that due to his personal life, in terms of with his whatever he does in his personal life, kind of like clouds his acting ability, and that is completely true. He doesn't get the attention he deserves, and this movie is awesome. And William Brentley being a bad guy, I can remember seeing that guy with the diabetes commercial. You got sugar diabetes, and him as a like a hitman in this movie is crazy. Also, the Jigsaw Killer is a hitman in this movie. Gary Busey's in this movie, which is he's just out of his mind in this movie, but fills the role perfectly. And it's a good book. And I think actually this movie is actually a better portrayal of the book. What do you think, Swell?
So yes, first of all, let's address the elephant in the room. Wilford Brimley, the diabetes guy, is something that my best friend Mike still texts me all the time. Except we don't quote the diabetes thing. He says, "These are my testing supplies. I have diabetes. These are my testing supplies." But it's something that I quote to this day all the time. The diabetes commercial. This movie came out. I think there was a run of like John Grisham movies that were made into, or John Grisham books that were made into movies. And this was a good one. I don't think this was my favorite one. I think A Time to Kill was my favorite adaptation of a John Grisham novel, but this movie was fantastic. He does play a lawyer that discovers upon this secret. What was Pelican Brief? I think was the other one.
Yeah.
So it was The Firm, Pelican Brief, and A Time to Kill all came out like in consecutive order. And I don't know what the order was, but I'm almost. There was another one too. The Client.
The Client's a very good movie too with
Yeah.
Susan Sarandon.
So like Grisham put out like good stuff. The dude could write. Also, do you know John Grisham wrote the novel that Christmas with the Cranks is based off of, called Skipping Christmas? He wrote that novel, and then they took that and turned it into Christmas with the Cranks. It's his only like non thriller novel, I think. And Christmas with the Cranks. When we get to our Christmas episode, that's my hidden gem. I love that movie. Sorry, I digress. But this fits like all those things that the John Grisham movies do. Like there's a secret that they stumble upon, and then they have to hide it, but they find out that they found the secret, and now they're after him, and they send a bad guy to kill him. It happened to be Wilford Brimley with his diabetes testing supplies, right? Like it's a great movie, and it was a movie that like my family, like my aunt and my aunt Elaine and my aunt Pat both loved thrillers like this, and I've probably seen it 100 times.
Yeah, totally agree. I love this movie. But let's get to your number 5.
Excuse me. Am I being fired?
Let me put it this way, Andy.
Your place in the future of this firm is no longer secure. We feel it isn't fair to keep you here when your prospects are limited.
Philadelphia, directed by the late John Demi, starring Tom Hanks, Denzel Washington, Jason Robards, Mary Steenburgen, Antonio Banderas, Joanne Woodward. This movie made another $206 million off a $26 million budget. Won 2 Oscars. This is the first of Tom Hanks' back-to-back Oscars, which next year he would win for Forrest Gump. I think personally this is a great movie, but Swole, let me know what you think. Why you chose this as your number 5?
Um, I also don't want to trivialize this movie like we did with Schindler's List. But there are a few things that like I will say about this movie. As a kid that moved to the suburbs, at 8 years old, this was my first introduction to some things that I didn't know existed. Right? I didn't know about a world of, gay men and their lifestyles, or what the AIDS pandemic was like or epidemic was like. Um, and this movie fucked me up. Like, I'm sorry, like this movie screwed me up. Like, Tom Hanks was primarily a comedic actor, and he had done some serious stuff, but nothing like of this magnitude. And I saw this movie and I saw the change in his physical appearance from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie. And it opened my eyes to a lot of things. And I think this is an important movie. I know that we don't talk about AIDS as much as we did, but this movie brought it to the forefront and made sure that like conversations were being had, and we weren't, stigmatizing people for what they were doing or how they lived. And we still have a lot of work to do. We still have a hell of a lot of work to do. This is a very important.
Yeah, this to me is probably John Demi's best work. I know he directed Silence of the Lambs, and I thought that movie was great. But this movie capitalizes everything that was going around at the time. Homophobia, with Denzel Washington's characters addressed in there. Just how people who are dealing with the HIV virus and were afraid at the time. And I mean, it's still kind of, people are still kind of afraid. We're a little bit more open now in 2022, but back then, like if you had it, people thought it was a plague. Like and that goes through even through with Denzel Washington's character, how he goes and gets tested right away when he meets Tom Hanks. When he is afraid of being touched by him because he thinks it can pass by just a simple touch, and he gets educated on that. But it also shows like the struggles that people who had HIV and eventually progressed to AIDS, what they went through, how employers were basically discriminating against them. It just touches on so many social aspects, and it's so beautifully played by Tom Hanks. Personally, I think this is Tom Hanks' best performance. I know people say Forrest Gump, Road to Perdition, but to me, this is Tom Hanks' best performance, and he's a great actor, but this is probably his best performance in my opinion.
I would completely agree with it. This is his best performance. The other thing is that this movie follows a very similar formula to American History X with Ed Norton, where Denzel Washington plays this man, and it's something that he doesn't understand and he doesn't agree with, and he says some things in the movie that like are hateful and hurtful, and he gets to know Tom Hanks's character Andy, right? I think his name was Andy. And he has a change of heart, and it's very similar to like Ed Norton's character in American History X, where like he realizes like hate is wrong, like it's not right to hate in your heart, and it's a very powerful movie. That like I can only stand to watch it or stomach to watch it once every 5 years, because it's that impactful and that like hard to watch.
Totally agree. It's very impactful. Just like Schindler's List, but it still holds up to this today, and it does, like I said, portray the events that were happening at the time and even before that time. So if you
Also,
haven't seen it, highly recommend it.
also, Bruce Springsteen wrote Streets of Philadelphia for this movie, and it's one of his finest pieces of work, and that is a lot to be said because the man has a catalog that needs to be celebrated. So Springsteen wrote Streets of Philadelphia specifically for this movie.
Yes, the boss. But let's move on to our next movie.
But what I have to offer you, that's as good as it's going to get. And it won't ever get that good again.
True Romance, directed by Tony Scott, written by Quentin Tarantino, starring Christian Slater, Patricia Arquette, Dennis Hopper, Val Kilmer, Gary Oldman, Brad Pitt, Christopher Walken, and James Gandolfini. This movie had a budget of $12.5 million and it made $12.5 million at the box office. This movie is a follow up to Reservoir Dogs that was written and directed by Quentin Tarantino. He actually wanted to direct this movie at first, but then kind of fell out of love with directing it and let Tony Scott direct it, who Tony Scott is a fabulous director in his own right. But in my personal opinion, this is Quentin Tarantino's best writing in terms of characters throughout his film history. I know people are going to argue with me about that, but I think this is his best script in terms of the way he has characters developed. And he does, like, if you notice a lot of Quentin Tarantino's stories he does a lot of callbacks to characters. Alabama was a character mentioned in Reservoir Dogs, and he mentions her, has her own backstory in here. So I love the movie. I love it's very grimy and it's a very violent movie, but the supporting cast is so great. James Gandolfini as Virgil, the fight he has with Alabama that is so like cringy in terms of the battle, but it's so impactful part of the movie. It's just an overall good movie to me. What do you think, Swell?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think that's a bold statement that this is Quentin Tarantino's best writing. Like, it very well might be. I think the thing that makes me want to not so much question that, but we don't know, is that we don't know what his script for Natural Born Killers was like, because Oliver Stone chopped it and screwed it so much that it was a completely different movie when they made it. So I would love to, like, I know it'll never happen, but I would love to read what Quentin Tarantino wrote for Natural Born Killers and what Quentin Tarantino wrote for Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers, to see what like his scripts would have been like for that. I love basically anything Quentin Tarantino does, and I don't care that, Tony Scott directed this movie. The supporting cast is fantastic. Dennis Hopper, I think, steals a large portion of this movie. The comic book store scene is super cool. You're so cool, right? Like, it's very quotable. It has, I think you used the word grimy just a couple minutes ago. It feels like a grimy dirt ball strip club infested like movie. It feels like that, like a film was put on the camera to film this movie to make it feel like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like white trash almost. Like, it's a great movie. I love Christian Slater in this movie. I love Patricia Arquette. James Gandolfini has had so many good supporting roles, and Tony Soprano. It's a great movie. I love it.
Yeah, you can totally see this Tony Soprano viciousness in Virgil in this
Yeah.
movie. But
Gary Oldman as like the white Rastafarian like drug dealer
Yeah.
is just fantastic.
Great. Like Gary Oldman's a great actor in his own right. Great, excellent at playing characters. The Man of Many Faces. They call him the new Lon Chaney of our generation because he can basically transform to anybody. But one thing I did find interesting when I was doing research for this is the two characters of Christian Slater and Patricia Arquette's characters were supposed to die in the end of the movie. That's the way Quentin Tarantino had written it, and Tony Scott fought for them to live. And when Tarantino heard this, he was kind of upset until he actually saw the movie, and he thought there was no other better way to end it the way he did. So, like I said, this is probably his best writing in terms of screenplay, in my opinion. But just that little thing is kind of cool to say. Like one of the greatest film writers that we've had in our lifetime was cool with somebody else changing his work because it turned out to be better.
You're not wrong, like at all there. Like it is cool. Like when I guess you would say when real recognized real, like he realized that, hey, you know what, maybe I was wrong, and like just that little bit of humility there from one of the best directors of my time. Just that's super cool tidbit that you found out there, Yumper.
That's what we do, bro.
I love it.
But let's get into your sixth pick.
Look at this sorry, miserable squash thing. Can anybody tell me what's wrong with this picture?
Falling Down, directed by Joel Schumacher, starring Michael Douglas, Robert Duvall, Barbara Hershey, Rachel Ticotin, Frederick Forrest, and Tuesday Weld. This movie again was another blockbuster hit, making $96 million on a $25 million budget. Tell me why it's your number 6, Will.
This movie to me is like an R-rated version of Office Space. This dude snapped and just had enough, right? Like the opening couple minutes where he's in his car and traffic is bumper to bumper in LA. And he gets out of the car and he starts walking and he goes to this convenience store, right? And he gets into it with the owner about a can of Coke, I think, right?
Yeah.
And it's a whole thing, and he takes the bat and he smashes up the convenience store, and like he looks into the convenience store owner's eyes as he's smashing stuff up, and he just goes, "Evil dies tonight."
I hate you.
No, like I think everybody gets tired and fed up with their job or being stuck in traffic. And he was dealing with like a divorce, right? Michael Douglas's performance was great. When he gets jumped, you forgot your briefcase. It's just a great movie. I loved it. It was a movie that I wasn't allowed to see for a while. And I'm not sure why, because I saw way worse shit than this. Probably because my dad didn't want to see it. He wanted to see Platoon, but he didn't want to see Falling Down, so I didn't get to see it either. But I love this movie. And I love Joel Schumacher, man. Like I'll defend Joel Schumacher. He's made some great movies. Like,
yeah, he has. Totally agree. Like
I am a Batman Forever apologist. I'm not a Batman and Robin apologist, but I'm a Batman Forever apologist.
He made Lost Boys.
He made The Lost Boys.
I mean, that's one of my favorite movies.
Motherfucker. I'm trying to watch The Lost Boys.
But Falling Down, I totally agree with you. This movie has a lot of controversial outlooks on it. I was looking at the reviews at the time when this movie was released. It had some favorable reviews. But then looking at how they do an outlook maybe in the more current time within the past 5 years, a lot of racial overtones in this movie, and I don't really agree with the way they're doing it. A lot of I was reading sort of several critics that were saying this movie pushes more towards white supremacy, which I don't really see it that way. I see it more as a person that's fed up with the way their life is going and basically finally snaps, as you said. And then when he meets a white supremacist in the movie, he tells him how disgusted he is by him.
Absolutely.
And like kills him. So I don't know how you can incorporate that. Maybe because Michael Douglas is a Caucasian. I don't know. But I mean, I couldn't see anybody else playing this role than Michael Douglas. He plays it perfectly as a frustrated guy with his glasses.
And the buzz cut and the white short sleeve shirt and tie. Remember that you remember the Simpsons episode where Homer's trying to wear a short sleeve shirt and tie to church? And Marge goes, Homer, you can't wear a short sleeve tie and a short sleeve shirt and a tie to church. And Homer just looks at me and goes, "Aw, but Detective Sipowicz does it," because he was talking about NYPD Blue. And like that always reminds me of like Michael Douglas's short sleeve and tie and Falling Down.
Yeah. That's a good callback. But yeah, Michael Douglas's character is this he kind of like shows how people deal with everyday life. Like when they say, when it gets bad, it gets worse sometimes. Like the shit keeps pulling in, like shit rolls downhill. So sometimes it happens that way.
Anybody that has ever driven down the Eisenhower at 8:30 in the morning knows exactly what it's like to want to freaking snap because you're in bumper to bumper traffic.
Yeah, especially when they haven't fixed the fucking train station by the joining area of 57 and 94.
Right.
Like, fucking horrible. But I could totally see like his frustration and his personal life, his aspects of his personal life were affecting him. Like it's a great movie. I definitely recommend you guys see this one. It kind of reminds me of a video game. Like the storyline just keeps getting worse. Like
it could be like a Grand Theft Auto type video game.
Yeah, just like
open world, exploring LA. Because he hits all these different neighborhoods.
Yeah, it just shows like the frustration. And it also shows how smart his character is at the end. Like to me, it's an enjoyable movie. It's graphic, but it's like enjoyable in terms of storyline.
I do remember vaguely that when it came out, it was pretty controversial about the release. I think this and Colors are the movies that I remember being very like criticized when they came out about the message in the movie.
And Duvall was in both of those.
And Duvall was in both of them. Yep, absolutely.
But let's go to our next one.
You think you're big time? You're gonna fucking die big time!
Carlito's Way, directed by Brian De Palma. It's written by David Koepp, who's a great Hollywood writer. Starring Al Pacino, Sean Penn, Penelope Ann Miller, John Leguizamo, and Luis Guzman. The movie made $63 million on a $30 million budget. This movie stands out to me for two reasons. One, Sean Penn's character is terrific.
Unreal.
Great. The way he portrays him, the slimy that he is, Davey,
His
hair, his look, that is just epitomizes like scumbag. And the second one is everybody loves Pacino in Scarface. Me and Swole personally don't.
I hate it. I think Scarface is the most overrated gangster movie to ever exist. I get it. There's a dude that built his empire up from nothing. This movie is better than Scarface. I will die on that hill.
Totally agree with that way. And in Scarface, Pacino's from Cuba and doesn't speak any Spanish. Like no dialogue besides oye and diello, which weren't even Spanish words. They were invented for the movie. In this movie, he has dialogue where he speaks fluent Spanish, and I love that part because it was adding realism. The Benny Blanco from the Bronx. How many times have you heard that? You think you're big time? This clip I used that has been used in a lot of house music in terms of when they lay down tracks as an opening, a cold opening, or when they're spinning, you could hear that line played. Like this movie to me, like epitomizes me from '93 because I loved it and I still do. As you can tell, what do you think, Swell?
I love this movie. Like I said, I think this is everything that Scarface wishes it should be. Scarface doesn't hold up well. This one does. I love that, like in an era where it was cool to talk about like Italian mobsters, they brought in like was he Puerto Rican or Dominican in this movie?
He's Puerto Rican.
Puerto Rican, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they brought in they focused on another ethnicity to talk about and what their struggles like growing up in New York, or like what it's like living in the neighborhood like that. And like Carlito's just trying to go straight, man. Like he wanted to open up a car rental shop and like rent cars to tourists. They say that line in the movie a couple times. And you're right. Sean Penn is a dirtball in this movie. And the cool thing is as much as I don't love Scarface, I get the appeal to it. Steven Bauer comes back and he's in a wheelchair in this movie.
No, that's actually Vito Mortensen's actually in the wheelchair.
You're right, but Steven Bauer's in this movie.
Yes, he is.
Right, Viggo Mortensen's in the wheelchair. I'm sorry, you're right, but like, it's a great movie. It's fantastic. The dialogue's great. You're right. Like people quote this movie all the time. Like you hear it in hip hop. Like I never got into house music, but like I get it. Like I get the quotes. It's a great movie. I love it. And it's not even my favorite Brian De Palma movie. The Untouchables is. The Untouchables is my favorite Brian De Palma movie. And for a couple reasons. They filmed it in my neighborhood. Like the church that I grew up going to school is in the movie. But Brian De Palma could write and direct a freaking movie, man. This is a great movie. Sorry, I got animated there.
No, it's totally fine. Like I totally agree with you. Like I like this movie just for the aspects the points I already made earlier. I think this is probably Pacino's, besides The Godfather, one of his underrated gangster movies that we kind of look past because everybody falls in love with Scarface.
Yeah.
And I think this movie is better than Scarface. The dialogue is 10 times better. The cinematography is 10 times better. The characters are 10 times better. John Leguizamo was a young kid, and he got such a big role in this movie as Benny Blanco from the Bronx.
Love it. Love this movie.
Yeah, and Luis Guzman is hilarious as always. But let's get to your number 7.
Hurry up, batter. It's gonna be a short game, and I gotta get home for lunch.
The Sandlot, directed by David Mickey Evans, starring Tom Gire, Mike Vitar, Dennis Leary, and James Earl Jones. This movie had a budget of $7 million and made $34.3 million at the box office. Tell me why it's your number 7, Swell.
To me, it's my favorite sports movie of all time. It's about buddies. It's about being a kid in the neighborhood. It's about playing baseball. Like, those are all things that I love. Like, I love hanging out with my homies. I love baseball. I love like being a kid was great, man. Like, you make fart jokes. You hop the neighbor's fence. You have sleepovers at your friends. This has all those things. But it centers around baseball and it centers around friendship. And it's just a really good movie, man.
Yeah, it has a lot of childhood reminiscences with me. Like playing baseball, like I played baseball till I got to my late 20s. Like, and I remember the kids like in this movie how they love that baseball is everything to them, especially to uh Mike Vitar's character. I can't think of his name right now. Oh, Benny the Jet.
Benny the Jet.
Yeah, so it was everything to him, and that's how it was when growing up. Like me and my brother played ball all the time, to the point where like if we didn't have a ball, we used to take a fucking newspaper and roll it in a ball and tape it as hard as we could to make a baseball. So we would play with our friends in the street, in backyards, whatnot. And this movie epitomizes that: the love of baseball, the American pastime, and how it affected me. It brought people together to play, and like I love the characters are in it. Squints with done with the lifeguard Wendy Peppercorn.
Wendy Peppercorn.
Yeah, Hamilton Porter. The guy still makes TikToks off Hamilton Porter. That's how big of an impact this movie made. A lot of people who grew up from our generation are gonna say this is one of their favorite baseball movies, and it's a kids movie, which I think is awesome.
Baseball's a kid's game, man. Like, this is a baseball kids movie. You know, the White Sox a couple years ago, pre-COVID, they hosted like after a Sunday afternoon game. No, maybe it wasn't a Sunday afternoon game, but whatever. I digress. They showed this on the big screen in center field, and they were selling like popcorn and licorice for like 25 cents and $1. And it was a super cool experience. I love this movie. Yeah, like no, everyone loves The Sandlot. Also, I think Mike Vitar also was in the Mighty Ducks too. So we went from baseball to hockey.
Yes, he did. But to go off your point of baseball being a kids game, another baseball movie I like, Mr. Baseball with Tom Selleck. That's a gem right there. He says baseball is a game where grown men play and get paid.
Yep.
But yeah, let's move on to our next one.
Oh, sir, I saw it. Some angry member of the kitchen staff. Did you not tip them? Oh, the terrorists they ran that way. It was a run by fruiting.
This is Doubtfire, directed by Chris Columbus, based on the book Madame Doubtfire by Annie Fine, starring the late great Robin Williams, Sally Field, Pierce Bronson, Harry Feinstein, and Robert Prowski. It had a budget of $25 million, and it made $441 at the box office. It won an Oscar for Best Makeup, and you see the movie, you understand why. The movie is so popular, it became a musical in 2021. This is another one of my favorite movies growing up as a kid. Robin Williams is hilarious in the movie. It also touches on a lot of things like how the bad breakups can be with divorces with wives and husbands, and how they share time with their kids, and how sometimes there are good fathers out there that want to spend as much time with their kids. Robin Williams' character is so in love with his kids and wants to spend time with them and cherishes them so much he actually dresses up as a nanny to spend more time with them, which is telling. I mean, the movie is just impactful. I mean, it still holds up to this day. I love Robin Williams.
Yeah.
It's just, to me, it's all around good.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. I think that it's just a good like 90s movie. Robin Williams is always going to be one of the best to ever do it. It was a movie that like your family could put on a Sunday afternoon, like after dinner, and no one would complain about it. But like, you know, my dad was always around to see like the impact that it was like when like his dad wasn't around and he did everything he could to be in their lives. I do want to say one thing to our audience right now. I don't hear these sound clips that Yumper puts together until we broadcast. So the reactions that you're getting from me are genuine because I'm excited to hear these clips. And the Run by Fruiting and Mrs. Doubtfire is one of my favorites. So the reactions that you see if you're watching the YouTube version of this are actually genuine, and I'm excited to hear these clips for the first time. But I love Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah, I really love that movie. I know it gets compared to Tootsie a lot, but it's nowhere near Tootsie. Tootsie's more of a political movie. This movie is based on more family oriented. Um, and I'm very happy that when they were talking about making a sequel to this movie, Robin Williams read the script and said, "No, it's not. It's not good. I'm not going to do it."
No, you can't do
Which
it.
which makes you respect him more as an actor.
It's kind of perfect.
Yeah, but let's get to your number 8.
Sometimes I feel I want to run away. I want to get away from the
It's a song.
Big hit on her.
part of me.
Coneheads, directed by Steve Barron, starring Dan Aykroyd, Jane Curtin, Chris Farley, David Spade, Michael McKean, and Michelle Burke. This movie had a $33 million budget, and it came under with 21.3 at the box. Tell me why it's your number 8, Swell.
To me, this is like the way a SNL skit should be turned into a movie. I think this and Wayne's World are the two best examples of how you could turn a skit into a movie. I think Dan Aykroyd was hilarious in this movie. I think Chris Farley dating his teenage daughter is some of my favorite comedy bits in a movie, especially when she houses the Subway sandwich. It's like, I haven't seen someone house a sandwich like that since my mom. Like, it's just funny. He chews condoms as gum. I just like this movie. I think it was really, really well made and super funny.
Yeah, totally agree. And also great appearances by other comics. Sinbad's in the movie.
Sinbad as the guy that owns the pawn shop.
Yeah, Beldar. I knew you were an alien. It was too good to be true. Like he's in there. You have Jason Alexander appearing, Phil Hartman appearing later
Yep.
in the when they're on Romulok. Just a well put cast. I really like this movie. It's really corny, but it's hilarious to me.
It's so corny, but it's
And
funny, man. Like, this is my favorite SNL adaptation of a movie. Like, I know people
Yeah.
are gonna say Wayne's World, but this is how it should be done. I like it, and I always got love for Dan Aykroyd. I always will have love for Dan Aykroyd. I just wish he would stop the Blues Brothers shtick. Like, I get it, man.
Yeah, I mean, well, John was really important to him, so that's why
I know
he does
John
it.
was really important to him, but John's brother Jim is a tool. And have you
I'm
ever
sorry.
when you meet my dad, like just bring it up casually in a conversation about how you love the way Jim Belushi represents the city of Chicago. Like, my old man will snap. He's like, I hate that son of a bitch. Like, hey, let's get a deep dish pizza and go to a Cubs game. Like, he does this imitation of him, and like he hates it. And that wasn't a Cubs joke. That wasn't Cubs
It's okay.
slander. Like, I wasn't picking on the Cubs. I was picking on Jim Belushi.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest Jim Belushi fan. It just makes me laugh when you said that because I told my brother this. I think he's okay, but I think he got a lot of his recognition because of his brother. But that I digress. I don't want to get into that because I'm just going to rant.
Let's get to round 9. Wrap
Yeah,
this
let's go
up.
to our 9. So here are our number 9s.
Stop it, Louie. Quiet, Louie. Stay, Louie. Eat. You don't scare me anymore, Ma. Maybe everybody else here, but not me. You understand? Louie, sit.
Lost in Yonkers, directed by Martha Coolidge, written by Neil Simon. It was based off his play that actually won a Pulitzer for drama that year. Starring Richard Dreyfuss, Mercedes Ruehl, Irene Worth, and David Strainen. I hope I said that right. Movie is one of my favorites. Again, growing up, my brother, we watched this movie. It was really impactful in the way the kids were interacting with their father and their grandmother. Their grandmother is a complete one of those really, really iron people who grew up in a foreign country and did not know how to process grief correctly. So she took it out on her children and then eventually her grandchildren. She was very mean in the movie. And you see shines of her breaking character to be soft, but she's just a very mean lady. And it's a great adaptation of the play. I think it's a good adaptation of play. This movie won 4 Tony Awards for Mercedes Ruehl, Irene Worth, Best Play, and surprisingly, Kevin Spacey was the original Louis And there was a lot of controversy that came out when he wasn't cast as Louis in the movie. Richard Dreyfuss was. But I think Richard Dreyfuss did a great portrayal of it, but he won for a Tony Award for playing the role and didn't get cast in the movie, so that's kind of crazy. What are your thoughts on this, Will?
I think for me, like this movie, it's a good movie. Like it was never anything special to me. I think the thing that stands out to me about this movie is that it was the first movie um to use Avid to edit it. And Avid was allowed filmmakers to edit and film stuff in a non-linear like timeline. And it first came out on the Mac 2. There's my little Apple plug. But it came out on the Mac 2, like one of the most popular computers that Apple has ever released. So this was a big deal to use that. It was done completely on Avid and a Mac computer. Super cool.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I didn't know that. It's kind of cool. But if you get a chance, check this one out. It's got some comedy in it, and it's a nice little timepiece. But let's go to your number 9.
3rd and 7.
Okie Thunder Lion.
What's your assignment?
Kill the quarterback. If the tight end's so hard his girlfriend dies, kill everybody.
The Program, directed by David S. Ward, starring James Caan, Holly Berry, Omar Epps, Craig Sheffer, Dwayne Davis, and Christy Swanson. This movie had a budget between $15 and $20 million, and it only made a little bit above that at 23 at the box, but it made a lot at VHS. Why is this still your number 9, Swole?
Well, the first thing is that the what are they? The Eastern State Timberwolves, I think is the name of the team in the program. They're based off the Florida State Seminoles, my favorite college football and college program to ever exist. College football is my first true love, and basketball, like college football and basketball are my first true loves. And this was based kind of off like when Bobby Bowden won his first national championship in 1993 with Charlie Ward and Warwick Dunn. So I think some of these characters were based off there. The movie had some controversy in the trailer when they are like not racing, but like sledding between cars. They pulled that from the trailer. It's like the football cinematography is corny as shit and it doesn't hold up, but it's about college football and it's about a college football program. One of the dudes uses steroids and stuff that like plagues college universities to this day. They touch on some things that need to be addressed, like sexual assault. I love Craig Sheffer. I love James Caan. I just think it's a good movie. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you in terms of the program. To me, it's a more updated version of All the Right Moves. It shows a lot of things that athletes have to go to, college athletes that is, to go through, and it shows how kind of cold-hearted these schools are. Craig Sheffer's character deals with alcoholism, and all they care about with his backup is can he fill in until he gets through whatever he needs to go through.
Or how's this going to affect his Heisman campaign?
Yeah, and his backup, I think, even has like a sexual assault or a pregnancy or something like that. And all they care about is, well, how many games will suspend him for?
Right.
It just shows. And then Dwayne Davis, like, he's great in another movie called Necessary Roughness, where he plays Featherstone.
He like tears his knee up in this movie, though.
Yeah,
and it was like you felt bad for him. You felt bad for him.
And he basically talks about how schools they didn't care if you went to class. All they cared about was you playing, and that's how he made money. And like his life is pretty much ruined when he tears his knee up. Like it just shows a lot of realism in sports, and it still happens to today, which sucks. But I really enjoyed this movie. The guy with the steroids, I can't think of his name at my top of my head, but that guy is fucking scary.
Dude, he played a Nazi in Higher Learning. Along with Cole Hauser. And he is scary, man. He was this movie was, let me see what was his name as Latimer. Andrew Bernarski.
Yeah,
he's just a big dude. He was in Street Fighter. I think he played Zangief.
Oh, did he?
He did in the Jean-Claude Van Damme movie.
So okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and he was in The Program, and he was also in Higher Learning. He was also in Batman Returns too. Was
he the big guy that he blows up with a bomb?
He might have been. He wasn't Bane though.
No, Batman. Oh, Batman Returns is with the Penguin, so I'm guessing he's a guy.
Oh no, yeah, he plays Christopher Walken's son. Chip
Oh,
Shrek.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he would like in the end when he puts the skull paint on, like it's a memorable like visual to me, just seeing him scream. But yeah, he totally was batshit crazy and intimidating in the movie.
He also did the voice of Lobo in like some of the DC
Oh,
animated.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, but if you haven't seen the program, I definitely recommend you guys check it out.
it's a good movie. Absolutely.
But let's go to our final 10th round picks.
What can I say? I'm a blast from the past.
Should have stayed there.
Demolition Man, directed by Marco Bambia, starring Sylvester Stallone, Wesley Snipes, Sandra Bullock, Benjamin Bratt, Dennis Leary, and Nigel Hawthorne. This movie had a $77 million budget and it made $159 million at the box office. To me, it's corny. It's probably one of my favorite action movies. It has Wesley Snipes with the bleach blonde hair that actually inspired Dennis Rodman to dye his hair when he played for the San Antonio Spurs. Also, I find it hilarious that Stallone wanted Jackie Chan to play Dennis Rodman's character of Simon Phoenix, but he turned it down because in Japan, the way they see their actors, if they play a bad guy, they kind of say it's not really good in public for them to do so. I think it's changed now, but it kind of destroys kind of the reputation as being our movie job, I think. And Lori Petty was actually fired as Huxley because she hated Sly. But the movie is corny. Taco Bell takes over the damn franchise wars, which is horrible, but it's just corny and hilarious to me.
Yeah. So the Taco Bell winning the franchise wars is hilarious. Having to wipe with three seashells, and figuring out the seashell system is still something that still baffles me. X amount of years later, like how does that system actually work? We're not going to get into that here, but how does that actually work with the three seashells? It's loud, it's obnoxious, kind of everything I wanted the last action hero to be, but it wasn't. I love this movie. I thought it was great. Like I'll never ever say a bad word about Demolition.
Yeah, it's so corny and just hilarious. But let's get into your final pick.
Is he really going to run for mayor?
Make a damn fine mayor, too.
Good thing he's his mother's son. If he looked like you, he'd never get in the ballot.
Grumpy Old Men, directed by Donald Petrie, starring Jack Lemmon, Walter Matthau, Anne Margaret, Kevin Pollak, Ozzie Davis, Burgess Meredith, and Daryl Hannah. The movie had a $35 million budget and it made $80 million at the box office. Tell us why this is your number 10, Swell.
I think this movie like sneaks into the top 10. One, it's hilarious, right? Like Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon going at it is funny. Two, my father and his best friend as a kid used to vacation in Wabasha, Minnesota, where this movie takes place as kids, and sleep like on the Mississippi River, like in tents or whatever. And they used to go to the bar that this movie was filmed in. It was called Slippery Dicks, was the name of the bar in this movie. And they used to go to that bar as probably someone that shouldn't have been in a bar at their age, but my grandmother had friends where this movie was filmed. It's funny, it's goofy. They play pranks on each other. It takes place in the snow. They go ice fishing. It's just a stupid, fun, wholesome movie that everybody can enjoy.
Totally agree with you. And when I say Grumpy Old Men, we're not talking about White Sox style or our one and only Mr. Hand. We just battled it out in the 108 tourney. But I think the movie is great in all aspects that it uses two legendary characters such as Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon, who are the original Odd Couple. And they fit so perfectly. So this is basically the Odd Couple as old men.
As old men.
Which I thought was great.
There's go ahead. I'm sorry, Yumper.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
There's obviously this movie spawned a sequel, Grumpier Old Men, where they bring in not only Anne Margaret but Sophia Loren, and Jack Lemmon's daughter Daryl Hannah, who's in the original one, is getting married to Walter Matthau's son Kevin Pollak, and they're wedding planning, and they're at the cake decorator. The cake decorator is this, Midwestern, like Minnesotan like woman. She's a big woman. She's like, well, we had an idea, right? She speaks in this Minnesota accent. And she's like, we're going to have the bride on the top with the fishing hook. And the fishing hook comes down and it's around the groom's neck. And in icing, we're going to write, Melanie has landed herself another husband. And it's just a stupid quotable line that I quote to this day all the time. I love it. It's terrible. It's just a fun movie. And everybody likes Grumpy Old Man. If you don't,
Yeah, it's hilarious. And also, Burgess Meredith, everybody knows him as Mickey from Rocky. But the man
the
was
Penguin.
or the Penguin, yeah. But the man was such a good character actor. Like he shows his more comedic side in this movie.
The
as a-
outtakes.
yeah,
Burgess Meredith's outtakes in this movie are hilarious because they're all sexual innuendos about like slapping the salami in the grocery store, and like the outtakes alone are enough for you to watch this movie if you haven't seen it 20 something odd years later.
yeah. We highly recommend this movie.
Yeah.
But with that, those are our top 10 draft picks. So let us know what you think at Yumper and Svo on Twitter, and check us out at thetaintedglove.com. But let's go into our honorable mentions. I can start off with my 3. I had What's Eating Gilbert Grape as one of them. Great movie, another great Leo performance in it. Tim Burton's A Nightmare Before Christmas and Leprechaun. All great movies. It's just kind of hard. This was a hard list to do and a hard draft to do. If we did top 20 movies, they'd definitely be in there. And to throw one in for Jen, my wife, son-in-law, another great movie. What about yours, So? What were your honorable mentions?
So my honorable mentions were Benny and June. I think 93 was a year that Johnny Depp really shined. Number 2 was Poetic Justice with Janet Jackson and Tupac Shakur. It was John Singleton's follow-up to Boys in the Hood, and it really showed that Janet Jackson could act. She was a fantastic actress. This movie was great. It had a great cast. Regina King was in this movie. Tupac was in this movie. Also, why do I want to say Q-Tip from A Tribe Called Quest was in this movie too. He was shot at the drive-in. That was Janet Jackson's boyfriend that was killed at the beginning of the movie. And then my final movie was Dragon, the Bruce Lee story. I didn't know a lot about Bruce Lee growing up. Like I never saw his movies and stuff. And this kind of introduced me to him. And I thought this movie was really, really like it was a good watch and really fun to watch. And still to this day, like if it's on, I'll sit down and watch it. So I really like Dragon, the Bruce Lee story.
Yeah, I actually like that movie as well. Also, the main character looked just a lot like him.
Yeah.
Like, they picked the perfect character to represent him, portrayal him. But yeah, those are our honorable mentions. Let us know what you guys think. With that, let's go into what we're going to be doing next. So, as you know, we're going to make the trip down to Vegas. The Tainted Glove Network is going to make the trip down to Vegas. God help us all, and pray for Vegas. We're going to go down there.
I think Vegas can handle 3 dudes in their 30s and 40s that don't run as fast as they used to and like to hit up the Chinese buffet. I think Vegas can handle us, man.
We'll see. We'll put that to the test. But since we're going down to Vegas, me and Swole have been spitballing and thought, why don't our next episode be about Vegas movies or movies set in Vegas, excluding Casino, because we got something special for Casino planned forward. But why don't we do movies related to Vegas? So that's what we're going to do our next episode on. So episode 6, when we come back for Vegas, will be a Vegas themed movie reviews.
That's going to be fun. It's going to be a good episode. And we'll maybe we'll do a little slideshow like at the end of The Hangover with some of our photos that so our audience can see on the YouTube version. It might not be as raunchy as the Hangover photo roll or camera roll, but we'll get some photos from our trip up there so you guys can kind of see us all hanging out with the Tainted Glove Network, including Aloha Mr. Han and the Reverend K-Fids. But we also have a couple members of the 108 family joining us in Las Vegas. We have Wally Money's coming with us. Follow him on Twitter. What is his Twitter handle? Big Sexy 75.
Yep.
Burly Cat King Nominson, my 108 tourney participant. Yesterday he won. He came over. We shot some great content together for the 108 tourney. Pete is also part of the 108, and also Brewhand Luke is coming with us to Vegas, along with my wife, Tom's wife, and Queen Nam Pockets 125, I think is her Twitter handle. Follow her on Twitter. They're all going to Vegas with us. We're going to be there for 4 or 5 days, and we're going to get into some shit, if you will.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Been looking forward to it for a while.
Yeah. What's funny is Yumper wasn't going to go, and we all went out to lunch together, and we all talked Yumper and his wife into going. So it was on a whim that they're going with.
Yeah, we got really excited. We fell into it.
You've
But
never
without-
met, right?
No, it's my first time. So if I come out like in The Hangover, God help me.
There will be no cocaine consumed on this trip. I promise you guys.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. But with that, we're gonna put a bow on this episode. Just wanted to give my goodbyes. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. We are nothing without the listeners. Thank you so much for the interaction. Shout out to the 108, Chirizi, MSS, and Beef Loaf, who are pretty big supporters of us and giving us shout outs on their platform. Guys, if you like White Sox baseball, you like bullshit, you like beer, check them out at the 108, from the 108 on Twitter, or at from the 108 on YouTube. And with that, Swole, let's get to your final thought.
Yeah, so my final thought actually is around the From the 108 tournament. It's just a fun little thing that the 3 guys in the 108 put together every year for us to have some fun with. Shout out to my boy Burley Cat for winning his matchup versus me yesterday. But it's really fun, and the 108 guys are big supporters of what we do. Treasy was one of the first people to offer us some actual legit feedback on our pod when we did our first episode. So if you get a chance, check out their YouTube website, their YouTube channel and their website, because they're always putting out great content. And it's not always just about White Sox baseball. It's a lot of pop culture references. I know My Sox Summer loves Dirk Diggler and Boogie Nights. So check out their stuff, and do me a favor. If you guys do go to the movies, shut your fucking phone off while you're in the movie. I went to go see Batman again the other day. It's my 6th time seeing it. Yes, I've seen it 6 times. But the guy next to me wouldn't shut his phone off in the movie. And it took everything in me not to murder him during the movie, because I don't want to see the glare from your oversized Android phone while I'm watching a movie that is super important to me. Like, I don't care if I was going to go see like a B movie, but I was watching Batman, and I love Batman. And I don't want to see your phone during the movie. So put your fucking phones away during the movie if you don't mind. That being said, we'll see you guys in 2 weeks when we're back from Vegas. And thanks for tuning in. Check out our website, taintedglove.com. I'm going to be posting something up there later tonight or early tomorrow. And there's always great content from the rest of the Tainted Glove Network. But on that note, deuces.
Peace, guys.
Thank you for listening to Yumper and Svo at the Show podcast, a Tainted Glove production.
That's it. I'm getting out of here.